So what about you, huh? What's next for Spider-Man?
Well, first I'm gonna go back to New York and get a decent slice of pizza. After that, I guess it's back to the old grind.
Think you're pretty funny, don't you, freak?
The moment that Flash Thompson becomes an Omega level threat, that's when the game is gonna get good. But regardless, welcome back, true believers and all you spectacular Spidey fans, to another very interesting Marvel's Avengers related video, where finally, after over one long year of waiting, the much anticipated PlayStation exclusive Spider-Man DLC has finally been included within Marvel's Avengers, and I am going to be reviewing it in its entirety. And at the time of this recording on December 3rd, I've officially been playing as Spider-Man within Marvel's Avengers for around 3 days now, which has fully allowed me to experience Spider-Man at his best by completely unlocking all of his main skills, as well as ranking up his power level to a fairly high amount. However, this is mainly going to be a review of Spider-Man as a character and what he brings to the table of Marvel's Avengers, and not the brand new patch 2.2 content that has been added into the game like the Claw Raid. Although, if you're someone who thought that Spider-Man was going to pull a complete 180 on Marvel's Avengers and turn the overall game around for the better, I definitely think they are going to be left rather underwhelmed. But before we dive into all the downsides pertaining to Spider-Man's inclusion in Marvel's Avengers, let's go over the positives. For one, and this should be obvious to all of you by now, especially if you have played all the other hero inclusions like Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, and Black Panther, is that just like all those other characters, Spider-Man is included in Marvel's Avengers exclusively on PlayStation for absolutely free. While you sadly do have to pay real money to unlock all the main attributes that do come with Spider-Man, like that of his cosmetics, takedowns, emotes, and more, he is added into the game simply within a brand new patch. And one of the biggest draws that was surrounding this DLC in the first place is simply having the premise of allowing Spider-Man to team up with the Avengers in a completely AAA Marvel game. And granted, while this isn't necessarily an entirely new endeavor for Spider-Man to team up with other Marvel heroes in a Marvel video game, especially considering other Marvel games like Ultimate Alliance and Marvel vs. Capcom already exist, we've never really seen Spider-Man within game media before team up with other Marvel heroes in a massively multiplayer-centric live service looter brawler like this before. And above all else, if Marvel's Avengers isn't the type of game for you, at the very least you will have some fun teaming up with 3 other of your friends and simultaneously play as Spider-Man or any of the other Avengers and completely immerse yourself within the massively combat-centric multiplayer mode.
An elite AIM team is close by and on alert. Updating your HUD.
And speaking of combat, this is obviously where Marvel's Avengers stands out the most, albeit for better or worse. When you finally begin playing Marvel's Avengers as Spidey at level 1, he's definitely going to feel rather stiff and clunky at first, obviously in comparison to the much more smoother and fluid version of Spider-Man within Insomniac's titles. But in my personal opinion, I don't think it necessarily makes sense, nor should you have expected Spider-Man within a completely Avengers-centric game to feel as smooth and fluid in comparison to a completely standalone Spider-Man title. It's not like Crystal Dynamics completely reworked the structure of Marvel's Avengers from top to bottom just to make sure that Spider-Man felt as good as possible, but rather that they fit Spider-Man within the gameplay format that Marvel's Avengers already had to the best of their abilities given the constraints that are set forth. That being said, the more that you start to play as Spider-Man, the better that he will feel over time, especially once you upgrade all of his combos and main movesets to make him feel even more Spider-like than before, as well as getting the hang of this new interpretation of Spider-Man's web swinging, which is mainly used not for style, but mainly used to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. And as you'd expect for a character like Spider-Man, that does include attributes like web swinging, wall crawling, wall running, and even web zipping. For a game that's already juggling 9 major Avengers heroes to play with from top to bottom and fully fleshing out their own movesets within this game, I do think Crystal Dynamics did do a fairly good job of bringing Spider-Man to life in a way that does feel natural to the Marvel's Avengers universe. So if you're someone who wants to focus more on the brawling aspect of Spider-Man instead of the much more open world style of exploration that we have seen in previous titles featuring the character, I can definitely see this being appealing appealing for certain players out there with specific gaming tastes. Sadly, the moment that you finish any one mission with Spider-Man within Marvel's Avengers, you'll likely have already played through all of them. One of the most lackluster and extremely disappointing elements of Spider-Man's inclusion within Marvel's Avengers is the fact that he essentially has no story missions. Or to clarify, is that he doesn't have any major story missions on the same level of impact that we did previously see with characters like Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, and recently with Black Panther. I already made another video going more in detail as to the exact reasoning that the gameplay director of Marvel's Avengers provided as to why exactly they gave Spider-Man a smaller scale event instead of a more story-focused hero operation. So definitely be sure to check that video out if you haven't already, but even though Spider-Man is exclusively on 2 platforms of the PS4 and PS5, the lack of story content within his main inclusion for Marvel's Avengers is still a huge letdown. Throughout the entirety of the With Great Power Hero Events quote-unquote story missions is that you're pretty much assigned a checklist of multiple objectives to do by simply completing missions within the base Marvel's Avengers experience. Either by completing Warzone missions, taking out a certain amount of enemies in certain ways, or using a certain move within Spider-Man's skill tree. And believe you me when I say that it gets old extremely fast. Especially if you're someone who watched my live stream of me playing as Spider-Man when he first released in the game on November 30th, is that I played through Marvel's Avengers for over 6 hours straight, and only then I pretty much got through halfway of the main objective list. Which extremely sucks for the majority of players out there who want to unlock Spider-Man's iconic suit within the game and wear it as soon as possible. But the only way to do that is by finishing all the main event objectives. Which overall, the amount of steps that do come with this event is close to nearly 20. And after having to suffer through that long, monotonous, and extremely tedious and unfun grind for Spider-Man, is the only bits of story that we did receive with Peter Parker is audio logs where he is talking to Liz Allen and learning more about AIM through other characters within the Spider-Man universe like Mark Raxton, Spencer, and even Alistair Smythe. Which pains me to say because it would have been rather interesting if, just like the other villains that we did fight within Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, and Black Panther's hero operations and expansions, where each character got their own villain to face off against, we could have easily had Spencer Smythe or even Alistair Smythe as the main villain that Spider-Man could go up against, especially by including Spider Slayers. We're already fighting hundreds of thousands of aimbots as it currently stands in Marvel's Avengers, so why not go a step further to fully flesh out Spider-Man's character as much as possible in his own unique story by going after Alistair Smythe and fight some rather challenging Spider Slayers as the Avengers. But instead, we're left with the same repetitive style of missions that have plagued Marvel's Avengers ever since its launch back in September of 2020. And even though this game has been out for over a year now, the same problems with the game haven't changed in the slightest. I've gone on record on several occasions that I'm not necessarily a major fanatic when it does come to alternate costumes within superhero games. And usually, I'll always wear the default attire when it comes to each character. And while that statement does remain true, I simply wanted to showcase throughout the entirety of this video all the different types of cosmetics that Crystal have included for Spider-Man, just to showcase for all of your viewing pleasure exactly what they look like in-game. And while I do appreciate Crystal Dynamics for including all the main heroes within Marvel's Avengers for completely free, and I do understand that a live service game like this needs to make money somehow, nearly spending over $60 to simply unlock a multitude of Spider-Man suits, takedowns, and emotes is once again a completely perverted use of the online marketplace. Especially paying for something as important as a takedown animation is just outright absurd. But what's even more absurd in my opinion is the complete misuse of Sean Chiplock within the role of Peter Parker. Don't get me wrong, because I'm a massive fan of Sean Chiplock, especially in some of the other games that I have played with him in it, especially games like Persona 5 where he plays Mishima, and Genshin Impact where he plays Diluc. But the fact that we're only able to truly hear Sean as Spider-Man within the opening cutscene and through audio logs is just a waste of a very talented actor. Besides hearing Peter talk to characters like Liz Allen, Black Widow, and Ms. Marvel, there's not a whole lot for Sean to do within the Marvel's Avengers universe. Given the fact that the name of the game is indeed Marvel's Avengers, you would think that there would be a lot more interactions between Spider-Man and the titular heroes. But instead, we received a completely boring and generic aim plot surrounding Spider-Man in a bare minimum amount, as well as getting bogged down from head to toe by the entirety of the game's looting and grinding elements which take forefront of the entire gameplay experience. And for a prominent character as utterly beloved as Spider-Man, the end result that we do have for his inclusion in Marvel's Avengers is pretty much one giant web of missed opportunities. If you're someone who actually owns Marvel's Avengers, I would personally recommend that you do give Spider-Man a shot, considering the fact that he is a free free additional add-on character, and you're not wasting any money to simply try him out within the game's main system. But if you do want to try and unlock different types of animations, takedowns, and suits for the character, then you sadly are going to have to shell out lots and lots of money. For what it's worth, I actually did enjoy playing as the character for the first couple of hours I got my hands on him, but after you start replaying through the same exact type of mission over and over again, that is where Marvel's Avengers quickly starts losing its luster. And considering that both the characters of Black Panther and Spider-Man, which were pretty much considered make or break factors for Marvel's Avengers as a live service title, are now currently released, and the game is still receiving mediocre reception from both players and critics alike, I don't necessarily know what that means for the future of this game within the next coming years of 2022 and 2023, even though both Crystal and Square have gone on record stating that there will be new characters added into the game throughout next year. Regardless, only time will tell to see exactly what happens to Marvel's Avengers down the line. But with all that said, everyone, that's the video I have for you today, and please let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. What do you think of Spider-Man within Marvel's Avengers, and what's your most favorite aspect about playing as him within the game? Do you enjoy his combat, his quote-unquote story, his suits, or maybe being able to play with all your friends as 4 separate Spideys? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you did enjoy, and for more Marvel's Avengers and Spider-Man videos like this in the future. And without further ado, peace out.